efforts to introduce a measure that would rein in President Trump's military powers. Democrats still fuming over Trump's threat earlier this week to take out Iranian civilization.
The words and actions of this president have proved that he is unhinged and unwell.
Threatening genocide is not a negotiating tactic.
Let's have a vote to end this war, because this ceasefire is a joke. This war should never have happened in the first place, and Congress deserves a say, and the American people deserve a say.
Joining me now to discuss is Democratic Congressman Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey. Congressman, what's your view of your colleagues, both their point, particularly in relationship to the president's social media post that has been referenced there, but also just the effort in general to move forward to restrict his war powers?
Well, I mean, you can't. First of all, thank you for having me, and you cannot look at what he posted and say anything but unhinged, unpresidential, and unhelpful on every side of that. So I agree with my colleagues. It's insane what he posted. The question now, of course, and the most important question is what's next? What's going to happen this weekend in the talks, which are critical? What's happening in the region? You rightly reported, and as was reported a minute ago, we've got a lot of issues to deal with. We're going to a negotiating table, it appears, using Iran's 10-point maximalist demands, which is a crazy point to me to start negotiating from, including removing all sanctions, letting them control the Straits, letting the Iranians regime keep control of uranium and of basically everything that I believe we must stand up to. And the purpose of fighting against one of our top adversaries in the world has been just to shut down their nuclear program, to shut down their terror program, to shut down their ballistic missile program, and drone program. And it seems like we're now going to be singing from their song sheet, and I'm very concerned about that.
Based on that, again, I think you make a really important point, which is squaring what the Iranians have on the table with what the U.S. has said their objectives are. It seems almost impossible at this point in time, although diplomatic talks, I think everybody hopes for a diplomatic off-ramp. But that would also imply that the U.S. hasn't actually met the objectives that the president set out at the start of this conflict. Is that a fair assessment of things?
Well, listen, that's one of the questions that many of us have, and as somebody who believes it's critically important that we do everything we can to crush this Iranian regime when their banner under death to America and has not only killed Americans and our service members and attacked our bases, but has continued to want to bring that kind of terror to America, not to mention our allies. So understanding that broader objective, when we're getting these ambiguous briefings, the Joint Chiefs yesterday, the chairman said that 80% of air defenses were destroyed, which is obviously sounds like a very positive number, but you got to dig down into that. He said 90% of weapons factories were attacked. That doesn't mean I understand what the status is. He talked about 80% of the nuclear industrial base was hit. Does that mean they were weakened or destroyed? What does that exactly mean? And those are the kind of questions that many of us have, especially when the president or his administration hasn't come before the Congress to publicly brief on the progress. And even on the Intelligence Committee, even a lot of the briefings we've received, don't give us the detail that I think we should be getting from an oversight perspective. So, there's a lot of questions. It goes back to the beginning of this conflict when the objectives weren't clearly laid out, right? And it's tough to meet objectives if you don't exactly know what those full objectives are. And that's been part of the frustration, even for many of us who believe, like I hope all Americans do, that Iran is our top adversary. They seek to undermine our freedom. They've killed tens of thousands of their own people, and they seek to do us harm. So they're an enemy of our country and the leading state sponsor of terror. We shouldn't make light of that. But how we actually execute this matters. And when the Straits of Hormuz is literally only letting 6 ships in, normally 140 go through there, and Iran is charging $2 million for each ship that went through in crypto or Chinese currency, you've got a problem. When Pakistan is the negotiator and they're good friends with, another top adversary, the government of China, that's a problem. When the defense minister the Pakistani defense minister called for Jews to, quote, burn in hell, that's a problem.
Can I just ask you, on the Strait of Hormuz, in the briefings you've received, have you been given any update about whether the U.S. feels like a military operation to reopen the strait is a feasible possibility at any point in the near term?
obviously I can't get into the specifics of that, but I'll just say as what's been publicly discussed, it's very complicated, and you see that Iran is exercising a lot of control and using a lot of measures, including crass ones, like with dropped off by small ships. You got mines and other sophisticated ways to really disrupt. And what companies are going to want to send their ships through the Straits of Hormuz if there's a 20% chance that something bad could happen, right? I mean, it's really wreaked havoc on 20% of our global oil production.
Yeah, it's a very complex situation. Obviously, a lot of complex elements going into the talks this weekend, as the Congressman just laid out. Democratic Congressman Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey, really appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.